Today we are starting section 5.3. It is what we will be working on the whole rest of the week. It is a third way to solve systems of equations, and it tends to be the favorite way to solve them. So today we will have the easiest case for solving by elimination, and as the week goes on, we'll add a few more steps to our process. All right, the first warm-up says to solve it by graphing and by substitution. So yes, we are going to do it both ways. It'll be a good refresher for those of you that need to wrap up that quiz still. If we solve it by graphing, we need to identify M and B for these lines. So for my top line, what's my slope? 2 over 1. And my y-intercept? Is 1. Always, always, always start your graph on the y-axis, which means we go up 1 from the origin. Slope you use as rise over run. Rise meaning we go up over to the right 1. Up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1. Or you could go down 2, left 1. Down 2, left 1, down 2, left 1. Again, the more points, the better usually, but you just need a few at least to make a nice straight line that goes through them. Questions about graphing that first line? Okay, the second line, again, we need to identify M and B. What's my slope for my second line? Negative 3 over 1. And my B? Positive 6. Start on your y-axis at positive 6. Slope, again, rise over run. This time we've got a negative slope. So where should we go? Down 3, right 1. Down 3, right 1, down 3, right 1. Or you could go up into the, instead of down and right, up and left. Make your line going through those points. And of course, it's pretty easy to see where they cross each other. Where does that happen? Careful with how you name your points. So we can see it happens right here. Liam?
1,
Good, 1, 3. So x, y. So when we solve this by substitution, we should expect to get the same answer. We didn't change the problem, we're just changing how we do it. So I'm going to make some space over here where I'll do it by substitution. Remember that when we use substitution, we are trying to get one variable alone in at least one of the equations. That's already been done for us. Y is already alone. So I can take that expression and plug it in to y in the other equation. When I do that, this is what I get. Questions about the substituting step here? Once we've substituted, then we need to get all the x's together. How could I do that? We could do it by subtracting 2x. That's one way. The other way would have been to add 3x. Now we're trying to get this x alone. What should I do? Subtract 6. 1 minus 6 is negative 5. Last step to get x alone. Divide. What do we get for x? X equals what? 1. Good. After we've done all of that, we still need to find, what haven't we found yet? The y. We just found the x. Now it's time to take that x, substitute it back in all the way up here so that we can find y. 2 times 1 is, plus 1 is. So again, we got the same answer, which we should have 1, 3. We solved the same problem 2 different ways. Questions, concerns about how we did that? Warm, fuzzy feelings? Void of all emotion? Okay, now remember, what we're about to learn is not fair game on today's quiz, or yesterday's quiz that you're going to finish today. So remember that when you finish up your quiz, you have to act like this stuff is not something you can do. You've got to do it by the ways that we've already learned. So that might be a little tricky, but we do need to get through today's notes before we do anything else with yesterday's quiz. Sorry that this is a little small. I'll try to read along and underline what we need. Okay, so this is the elimination method. You've got that big bold note to remember to write your solution as an ordered pair. Same goes as we've been doing. So first we need to identify the opposite pair. An example would be 4x in one equation and negative 4x in the second equation. So a pair that looks the same, but one's positive and one's negative. Same number. Add the 2 equations together to eliminate the opposite pair and solve for the remaining variable. So whatever variable is left after one of them eliminates, you'll solve for that. Use the value of the remaining variable to substitute and solve for the variable that was originally eliminated. So those are our steps. Example 1, they kind of broke it down, parts A, B, and C for us to do. So part A for example 1 is to circle the opposite pair. What is my opposite pair on example 1? So an opposite pair means they look exactly the same, but they have different signs. Somebody said it. 3x and negative 3x is the opposite pair. So 3x and negative 3x. Those are exactly the same, but one's positive and one's negative. So when we add the equations together, I'm going to do this kind of like you would have done addition with multi-digit numbers back in like first grade, whenever it is you learn that. You know how when you got something like 5,722 and you're adding 1,234. How did you go about doing that? Just real basic. How did you do that? What direction does the problem go?
Left and right. Well, no, right from left. I did 4 plus 2.
Okay, so you went
2 plus 3.
down these columns, right? You went down columns when you added those to get what goes below. The same thing happens here. You're going to add down these columns that get created. Same idea. You're just going to combine or add the equations together. What happens when we add 3x to a negative 3x? It cancels out or eliminates. That's the whole goal here. What do we get when we take 3y plus 7y? 10y. The equal sign kind of stays where it is. What about 12 plus a negative 2?
10.
A positive 10. Okay, so we added the equations. Now we're going to solve for y. How would we do that? Divide. What does y equal? Y equals 1. Substitute y and solve for x. So when we do this, we have to pick if we're going to substitute into the top equation or the bottom one. And it really doesn't matter which one you pick. So you tell me, are we going to use the top one or the bottom one? Okay. If you used the bottom one, you should still get the same answer. So we're going to take y, we're going to plug it in to the top y. So 3x plus 3 parentheses 1 equals 12. We're trying to get x alone now, so we should simplify by multiplying the 3 and the 1. 3 times 1 is 3. My next step to get x alone, subtract 3 on both sides. Create a little more space down here. Subtract the 3. Now we have 3x equals 9. Last step for x. Divide. X equals. Our answer should be written as ordered pairs. So what's my answer? 3, 1. So look for your opposite pair, combine your equations to eliminate that pair, solve for whatever variable is left, plug it back in to solve for the other variable. Questions about these steps or example 1? Okay, my hope is that these next few examples will go pretty quickly. When you already have an opposite pair, it makes it go pretty fast. These problems get a little bit longer when it's not already set up nice and neat for us. But today we're going to keep it simple. So on example 2, what is my opposite pair? Okay, the x's again are my opposite pair. If it helps you to like X those out or circle them and draw a line through them, whatever it takes, that's fine with me. Okay, but then we have to combine what's left. Make sure you're watching your signs. That 2y is not positive, it's negative because of that minus sign. So combine a negative 2y with positive 8y. What do we get? Positive 6y equals, combine a negative 12 with a negative 24. Negative 36. To get y alone, we should divide. Y equals. Questions about that first part? It goes pretty quick. Okay, we're going to take that 6, negative 6, and we're going to plug it in for y. Remember, y is equal to it, so we plug it into the y spot. Technically, you could use the top equation or the bottom one. It really doesn't matter. I'll go ahead and keep going with the top for now. If you use the bottom one, you should get the same answer. This time when we simplify, we got to watch our signs. A negative 2 times a negative 6 is a positive 12. To get x alone, we should subtract and then divide. Good. What do we end up with for x? Close. Dominic? 6. Our answer has an ordered pair? Good. X comma y, 6 comma negative 6. Questions, concerns about example 2? Need more time on it. Okay. Go ahead and try example 3, and if you get through it, example 4. We'll talk about them in a minute. These ones should go pretty quick because once that variable eliminates, you're left with a pretty simple equation to solve. Probably takes just as long to have to take it and plug it back in. Okay, so we just said the y's would cancel out. What would we have left if we combine our equations with the y's gone? 3x equals 30.
Wait, so you added 19 plus 11, that's how you got
Yep, we add down the columns,
3x equals
which means x would equal 10. Okay, once we get that, we need to take that 10 and plug it back into either of the top equations for... What's it getting plugged into?
10. X.
X. I don't really care if you want to use the top one or the bottom one. I'll use the top one.
Subtract 10.
Good. That 10 is a positive 10, so to make it go away, we have to subtract it. Which means we are left with a negative y equals 1, but I don't want a negative y.
Divided by negative 1.
Change the sign, we get y equals
Negative 1.
our answer as an ordered pair.
10.
Very good. X comma y, 10 comma negative 1. We good with example 3? Okay. Let's go through example 4. Some of you may have already started on it. On this one, which variable cancels out?
Negative 6 and 6.
X's are gone. When we combine the others, what do we get? 9y equals negative 9.
Y equals negative 1.
Divide by 9. Questions about getting there? Okay, plug it back in. Again, your choice. Are you going to use the top or the bottom equation?
Top.
Sure. I like using the top. It really doesn't matter. You got to plug it in. And then you got to simplify. So we have negative 6x minus 5 equals 1.
Add 5.
Add your 5.
Negative 6x equals 6.
Very good. When we divide,
1.
if x equals negative 1, my answer as an ordered pair.
Negative 1 comma negative 1.
All right, number 5, what variable eliminates? The x's eliminate this time. Remember, we're looking for that opposite pair, so 4x and negative 4x eliminate.
Ding.
When we combine, what do we get? 10y equals negative 10. To get y alone, we would divide. Y equals... Now, one person has helped me through this problem so far. So, either everyone else just lost their voice, or maybe some people need to ask some questions because they're not sure what's going on. Do we have questions at the moment? Are we getting our examples copied down so we have something to refer back to later? From here, we found y, we still need to figure out x. So we plug y back in. Make sure you're watching your signs. A positive times a negative makes that 8 negative. To keep solving, we would add, and then we would divide. What do we get for x? 7. So our ordered pair would be 7, negative 1. So, what did we notice about example 6? everything cancels out. But we can still use some numbers to represent this. Okay, if these cancel out and these cancel out, what number would represent that side? A 0. If we take 6 and combine it with a negative 6, we get 0. Do we agree with this statement?
Yes.
So what do you think for our answer?
Infinite many solutions.
Infinitely many solutions. Okay, on number 7, you might have noticed a similar situation. Which variable eliminates? X and Y.
No solution.
So this time we end up with 0 equals, do we agree with that?
No.
So our answer is
No solution.
no solution. Questions about examples 6 and 7? All right, we are doing the word problem. A boutique in Fairview Heights specializes in leather goods. Last month, the company sold 38 wallets and 98 belts for a total of $9,700. This month, they sold 52 wallets and 12 belts for a total of $4,360. How much do they charge for each item? So you have to decide what X and Y represent. There are two things that we don't know here. We don't know how many what? How much it costs for each item. And there are how many items here? 2. There are wallets and there are belts. So you have to decide. X is going to represent what? Wallets, sure. So the wallet cost. And that would mean Y represents the belt cost. So we have to build our two equations. So for the first one, what coefficient do you think goes on the X? 38. There were 38 wallets. So 38 times the wallet cost. Plus, we also sold belts. How many belts? 98 belts times Y is equal to how much money they made. What do we think the other equation would be? 52x plus 12y Okay, questions about how we got that set up? Nothing? Okay. Now, I'm not entirely sure why this got put in today's notes, because right now, are we set up to eliminate anything? No. So we can't just start adding these equations together if we're not set up to eliminate. So I think that the setup of this is good, and I like that. And we will kind of hang on to this problem until we learn a better way or get further into elimination, because I don't want to confuse you with showing you all the steps today before we've actually put them in our notes. So here, this is our setup. We'll come back to how to solve this later on this week. Okay. So the last problem here is the challenge one. I want to focus on the elimination, so that way you've got a little bit of time for your quiz. So graphing and substitution, that's what you're about to do in your quiz. For elimination, this is set up a little different from all the other problems we've done. However, we do still have an opposite pair. Which one is it? The x's. So we can still do this with elimination. We still just add down our columns. So y plus y would give me 2y. We leave the equal sign where it is. The x is eliminated. So we've got 1 plus 5, which is 6. So even though the setup is a little bit different, we've still got our x's and y's lined up. Next, we have to solve for y by dividing. Y would equal 3. So this time when we plug it back in, again, I don't care if you plug it into the top or the bottom, but it's got to go in for y, which means we're going to have a little bit of work to do to get x alone. What's one step I could take? Subtract the 1, and then divide by -2. So what do we get for x? -1. So our ordered pair, -1, 3. Questions, concerns about what we've been doing? All right, I'm going to pass out your homework first, and then I will bring your quizzes around for those of you that need to spend more time on it. If I try to hand you your quiz back and you don't want any more time on it, then that's fine. You can just hand it right back to me.